Here we are then, bits and bobs once again. This particular combination I know from my Teams chat where I have to update the date. 7th of February, the last time Conor and Conan Doherty were in a studio together. And now it's a different world. February to May, everyone. Hello.
Wow. Do you know, I actually got excited there. I was like, I wonder what date it is. I hope Joe does that. I hope he does the maths for me.
Yeah. 7th of February.
Yeah. And I think, if I remember correctly, on that one, you said how long it had been since the previous one. So it's...
I like to do it.
Yeah.
Indo Sport Podcast at independent.ie. We'll keep this relatively time-sensitive list. So I know Bits and Bobs often a Friday. We know when you listen. Lots of you listened on Monday morning to last Friday's one, interestingly. So we'll try and keep it relatively current, regardless of when you're listening. See, we had planned to do one yesterday and on Friday, but then I went and got sick. My voice went. So I wasn't in. So Bits and Bobs today. David Gillick is in studio tomorrow, so that will help you across the weekend as well. We won't, in a bid to keep it relatively current, talk about the golf, because that's obviously about to start. Jaime Diaz was brilliant. I had a few people say to me they thought he was really, really good, talking about the USPGA. He's kind of, in my opinion, doyen of golf journalists, articulate, insightful, very interesting. So he is in your feed. And we have a good guest for you already lined up for Monday on the golf. Just need Rory and Shane to get the finger out. And win again would be good. John Milan with Will yesterday. Dan McDonald as well on the football. So that's kind of our bag. So just one Bits and Bobs this week. God, I can hear it in my ears. I think my voice is like very sexy right now.
It is actually. I was a bit.
Isn't it?
I wouldn't have used that word. I would have said gravelly or sort of manly or something.
Pejorative.
But if that's what you find sexy.
Will said more manly outside.
Did he?
Which made me think, is it not?
Yeah, not sound.
What would you say it is the other 99% of the time?
You're like the time Phoebe in Friends when she got the cold. Yeah, she
Sticky.
turned kind of very jazz blues there for a while.
Yeah. Could I prolong this? How do I keep this just this level of sickness? Maybe if I kind of do something to attack my immune system, I'll just keep this going for a week or two.
Get a shower before you come to work, but don't dry yourself. Come in.
Interesting. Yeah, open to ideas. So lots going on. I was very conscious of the fact that we never really mentioned Rachael Blackmore on the show thus far. The good news is we are talking to her next week. She's retired, obviously. It's hard to say something original about Rachael Blackmore, but we should mention her nonetheless. 35 years of age. She's getting out intact, which is always a good way for a jockey to go. And she's been riding for 16 years. I guess the headline stuff is 18 wins at Cheltenham and then a lot of big wins as well. So the first female jockey to win the Grand National, first female jockey to win the Gold Cup and more beyond. Kind of iconic, really. Like one of those sports people that you know in 100 years' time there will be a statue of her in her hometown, if there's not one already. There'll be a statue of her at Cheltenham. There'll probably be a statue of her at the Curragh. And kids will walk by and go, who was that? And, oh, that was the first female. You know. So she's kind of one of those, even though she's not like attention grabby at the moment. And there's no kind of fascination with her personality because she's just a straightforward type in that way. She's going to endure for generations in a way that lots of the more kind of news cycly people of the moment won't.
Yeah, it was a weird, it's strange how her career was just so kind of normal. And I mean normal in the way that I think if in any other sport, if you had women competing in predominantly male events, that would be the focus more. Whereas I think Rachael Blackmore, she was always kind of judged and analysed on her merits as a jockey. Like the stuff about being the first female to win the Grand National and the Gold Cup and the 18 wins in Cheltenham, you know, like they are facts. But regardless of that, it wasn't as if people were saying, oh, well, that was a great win for her as a woman. You know, after that, she just became, on her bona fides, judged as a jockey. And I mean, I suppose it's one of those sports where you do tend to find that jockeys tend to go on until they can't anymore, and I think it's probably refreshing to see somebody kind of have had enough of it, you know, if that is her thought process here. Yeah,
fascinating to see if there's like an upsurge in female jockeys as a result of this, or will it still be a tiny minority who put themselves in the firing line at 30-40 kilometres on a horse over fences. But it's been trailblazer in so many ways. Like I said, we're going to talk to her next week. and we're looking forward to that. She's a new book out as well. She's dabbled in some fiction, so that's why we're talking to her.
Granny National, I think it's called.
Granny National, yeah.
Great name.
Men's sevens abolished. IRFU have confirmed it will discontinue its men's sevens programs following this season. This is as simple as money, basically. So last season, IRFU posted its accounts, and it was 18 million in the red. They spent 4 million on sevens. Now they're keeping the women's program. The logic there is that there's a lot of crossover between the women's sevens and the women's 15s, and it can be a gateway for women to play 15s as well as sevens. They're keeping the women's program, but the men's program has just gone scrapped, and there's kind of shock, disbelief, anger amongst all those players, as you might imagine, who'll struggle now for a career in the game. Yeah, but it's like we're 18 million in the red. David Humphreys, financial situation, very challenging, etc. Crucial we secure long-term success of Irish rugby. Difficult decision. And so they've turfed it out, really. One of the reasons, by the way, they're 18 million in the red is that when the World Cup was on in November 23, that meant there were no home internationals. And so that means the income drops from 92 million the previous year to 79 million. It really is the games at the Aviva Stadium with the Irish men's team that are the backbone of Irish rugby. That's what brings in all the cash. So it's kind of rough, really. David Nucifora, Australian, more of a sevens pedigree, really pioneered this, and this was like the big dream, and get to the Olympics, and money was put in, and they got to the Olympics, and now it's like, that's why it's so tough to cut you.
It does seem quite frivolous, though, and like 4 million's a lot, and if there was some sort of gateway sort of connection between the sevens team and, the men's senior 15-a-side team or whatever, you could kind of nearly justify it if there was some sort of developmental quality of it. But as a standalone team, just doing what it is in a situation where you're that far in the red, I mean, I'd say it would be reckless to keep it.
Really, yeah.
Is that the problem, though? Is that we're constantly looking at it through the prism of how does this connect to the 15s? And I know we're so far away from ignoring that because it's not its own entity, but it's supposed to be its own entity. It's supposed to be its own game, but it's constantly looked at like, how does this impact the national team, the provincial game, the club game, the schools game? And it's not the same thing. In an ideal world, this would just be operating as rugby sevens.
Yeah. We just don't have the interest as a country in sevens. They got to the Olympics. What more can they do to try and attract eyeballs? It's just not a thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's you forget how small, because it's so big in this country, a sport rugby is globally, really. If you took a list of the top 20 countries in the world by population, only one of them would probably have qualified for the last World Cup. And to have this kind of abridged version of it knocking around as well, it would be one thing if it was a little bit like the 2020 cricket, where it actually had a broader appeal in different countries. But it doesn't really.
No, it doesn't.
America are quite good at it, and that's kind of, the quirky side of it. But it's not as if this is huge in China or South America. It's just a different version of rugby. So
I had thought, we'll ask Rory O'Keefe next week when they're in, we're talking rugby again. I had sort of thought that the Olympic aspect was generating money and bringing some money in, so it was a wash in its face, but clearly not. So they're, it's 4 million on sevens generally. So like the women's team is still going to cost money. So they're just saving 2 million where they can, it would seem. So that's the news on the rugby front this week. Meanwhile, Ruben Amorim has been doing press because Manchester United play Chelsea on Friday, so he's doing media. They've Spurs, obviously, the Europa League final on Wednesday. He's just he's too honest for his own good, really. Has vowed not to walk away, but yet again says, listen, I'm going to be sacked if this doesn't turn around soon. He just can't stop saying, this is so terrible. I really will be sacked, honestly. Like, they're not going to hang around much longer. I'm going to be sacked.
Has he consulted his agent to find out exactly what the parachute payment is and he's trying to hint. Oh, God, well, maybe.
He was asked, would you be better off, though, without Champions League next season? He said, that is my feeling. We need more time with the team. He says, Champions League, Premier League season next year, that would be tough. That is my feeling.
Would this have been better for Amorim if they lost in the semi-final to Athletic Bilbao and they don't have Champions League next season? I completely get what he's talking about. They're not ready for Champions League. He needs time to implement stuff. They're going to be fighting a battle on two fronts then if they go into the Champions League. But now the way of knocking into the Champions League is losing a final to Spurs. You know, whereas if they had just gone out in the last round or the round before that, it would have been like, well, look, now we can really get started now in the summer. But
And we got Ruben Amorim to manage a few GAA teams. So, like, the honesty there is fantastically bracing. Like, I love the you get this look back of a GAA manager when you ask them a question, and the premise of it is, we know what the honest answer is, but we also know that you're going to avoid trying to give the honest answer. It happened at the Munster final recently when Owen Cormacan from the Examiner asked Jack O'Connor about the degree of difficulty in the group, and he just looked and fairness to Jack, like, he's been around a long time, this is his last year, and instead of just coming straight out in line, he kind of preceded by saying, geez, Owen, you're always asking me difficult questions, what do you want me to say? They're all useless. And then he gave us the whole, well, blah blah blah, me, they're this and this. So that kind of honesty is almost bracing.
Amorim, and it's been picked up a lot now. Like, he needs to stop saying how terrible they are. Like, he did an MUFC in-house interview during the week after they'd lost again to West Ham, who had not won in 8 games. You know, they came to Old Trafford and that was just the comfort blanket they needed to win and head off home. And he was just, and he's on MUTV, we're just so bad. Like, it's incredible. Like, I really should be sacked.
yeah, Roy Keane got thrown out of the club for doing something similar.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Amorim is worse than Roy Keane's infamous MUTV video for just how terrible they are. So I'm sort of very taken with him. The way he speaks, the way he conducts himself, and yet this is unacceptably terrible. And that's the system, and I'm sticking to it. That is not management. And I think I don't see how it's going to get dramatically better over the summer, even if they buy 2-3 players. If he's still just playing the system and the performances, I like current trajectory, Champions League or no. He's sacked before Christmas. But it's just like, this is just terrible.
But isn't it great that we have the Europa League final of the two great ideologues? It's just like, look, we're not changing. It doesn't matter if we lose every game under the sun. We're going to be playing this system till the day we're sacked.
I know. I can see the two of them looking at each other in touchline. My team's playing shit. My team's playing worse. Are you changing? No. Absolutely not. Cool. Me neither.
I told them how we're playing in the summer. I don't know what else you want me to do.
Yeah.
But I'm like, is this not the definition of madness? Like,
Yes.
So, I've said it before. We could all learn a system, perfect a system, go into Manchester and say, this is the system I believe in. And you never realise, you don't have to analyse the opposition. You don't have to change anything. It's my system.
And then every kind of 6 months he like beats City 4-1 or something, and everyone goes, oh, here we go. It's slowly coming together.
The reason I mention him, the headline that caught my eye was not so much, his usual thing. He has paid for 30 of his United backroom staff to take their families to the final because the club said, no, we're not taking you. The club had said coaches, physios, support team would have to pay for their own tickets. Imagine being a physio and being told,
Pay for your own
pay for your ticket.
Their own tickets.
Yeah.
But did not get a special I'm a physio ticket.
Well, maybe these are the physios that just do the Monday to Friday at Carrington job and aren't match day physios.
God, that's
bleak.
That's bleak, isn't it?
It's bleak. This is like the third highest revenue in world football every year. The players' families also being limited to 2 tickets each, and after that they have to buy. The club aren't paying for them. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to bring my mum, my dad. Can I bring my wife? No, you can't. You have to pay. Like, okay. And then, as people know, there's not going to be a parade should they overcome Spurs. They'll have a barbecue at Carrington. I don't. Is that cost saving?
Bring your own sausages.
Yeah. Is that cost saving, or is that just like we'd be embarrassed to have a parade as we stave off relegation?
I'd say there's a
saving us.
little out of column A and little out of column B there.
You'd probably have to pay for security and police efforts, wouldn't you? Amorim, to be fair, said it was understandable the club have laid off 200 people and then 250 last summer. So, he gets that they're not. I don't actually know what is standard here. Like, do Liverpool pay for everyone to go or not? To be fair, so there's a bit of a vacuum. But it does just highlight the bleakness off the pitch. Jonathan Wilson was on this week and we were marking the 20-year anniversary of the Glazers arriving. And just looking at the figures again. So when they did the leveraged buyout in 2005, they put 600 million sterling of debt on the club in effect.
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, $1 billion of dividends, to Glazers, a lot of money, and to banks have been paid off over the 20 years. But the core debt has only gone from 600 million in 2005 down to about 500 million. They've paid off none of the debt. It's just been like, we're servicing it. Oh, banks, interest rates, sure, dividends. And there's still 500 million debt on like the biggest club in English football financially and beyond. It's just one of the most
It's the greatest swindle of all time.
swindles. Yeah.
To be fair to Arsene Wenger, I remember when he was warning about all of this, and he was, because there was like, what an innocent time. We were all a little bit kind of dazzled by the Roman Abramovich model, and at that stage we didn't really understand it, and it was like, rich geezer comes in, puts loads of money into the thing, jazzes up the whole league. And Arsene Wenger warned, he said, look, these American people are investors. They're trying to make money out of the club. So one person is using the club to burn money, to launder their image or whatever it might be, whereas this is the exact opposite. And it was only kind of in hindsight that just the brazenness of it, like, is really, really incredible.
Yeah. Jonathan Liu had a great story I mentioned to Jonathan of the first time the three Glazers were at Old Trafford. It was in '05, and they went to see the Megastore, which was a big thing at the time, the United Megastore. And he describes brilliant, like they're raiding the Megastore, jerseys and merchandise, and it's run through the tills, beep 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 beep, and then at the moment of pain, they just walk off with the stuff. Like, of course we're not paying. Is the perfect encapsulation of what this relationship is from day one.
Threw that on top of the other debt.
Yeah.
We left it.
Yeah. GAA World, there's plenty going on. Skortgate continues. Special Congress is Thursday, as everybody concerned prays to God that Sarah O'Donovan's hunch that this may be rejected is wrong. So this all started obviously with the Leinster semi-final. Kilkenny Dublin wore shorts, sent back down the dressing room. I feel, by the way, that referee's been portrayed as some kind of misogynist, a man telling women what to wear. I think that's a little cheap and unfair. He's a referee doing his job. It's been it's a bit silly. And like the Camogie Association, has a male CEO now, but otherwise female run all the way.
Male president. First ever male president.
Yeah. So this isn't a man telling woman what to wear thing. And I think that's been portrayed in certain quarters, and that's wrong. And like the Cork delegates who seem to vote no all the time, they're predominantly female, as Sarah was telling us last week. Not that it's not a complete scandal all the same. So the Munster final was cancelled last week, which is crazy. Cork and Waterford, because they were intent on wearing shorts. And now the Leinster final is on this weekend, and it's kind of a curious one. They're going to play under protest. So they're going to wear shorts, and then it seems if they're told they can't, they'll put on skirts. But they've asked for this to almost happen off camera, as in this won't be filmed, there'll be no photographs. It's a kind of a symbolic protest whilst still allowing the game to go ahead. That's what's happening this weekend?
That's what's happening this weekend. They didn't go quite as far as the Munster finalists, Cork and Waterford, and just sort of open, which to the Camogie Association necessitated the cancelling of the match 24 hours beforehand. And I suppose there is some logic to it, but I mean, ultimately, maybe the better protest would have just to be completely stick to your guns. I don't know, is there any sort of great logistical reason why they need to get this game out of the way this weekend? But like, this sort of stuff really annoys me. It's just, the delegates next week at Special Congress will be heavily mandated, maybe not mandated, but from the leadership of the Camogie Association. They have been advised to vote in favour of this. So, like, the upper echelons of the Camogie Association, who have been extraordinarily silent over the last little while all this was taking place, they want the change, but they're well aware of the fact that, in certain quarters, there's almost a protest vote. People say, well, players are being uppity now and they aren't observing the democratic process that took place at their most recent Congress. But, like, in the GAA, they have a great phrase, and it's, they have a, what do they call it? Something from rule. What do they call it? Basically, if a rule doesn't suit them at a particular time and they don't have the machinations to change it quickly enough, they'll have a deviation from rule.
Sean Kelly, speaking this week, said the best thing to do at the moment is suspend the rule.
Yeah.
Until you can fix it. And I'm surprised they haven't done this and say, look, if they come out with a statement to say, look, we recognise there is a real upsurge here of player feeling on this issue, we'll have Congress. In the meantime, on the basis that that match is being cancelled is like a crazy scenario, you have the option of wearing shorts, and then we'll have a vote on this on the 22nd of May, and we'll proceed on that basis. Why they haven't been able to do that, I don't know. It's possibly too democratic an organisation, but that's too unwieldy that you can't react a bit more adeptly here.
But why is this rule held on to so tightly as well? Because I'm not having a go at the ref. Absolutely not. I've been in situations, never been a referee, but similar to that where I've acted in a certain way, especially, when it comes to playing a game under protest, and it's like, I wish I had just done this, or I wish I had stood my ground, or so it's not on the referee at all. It happens so quickly, but like, why is this rule so followed, like, to the letter? Because if you look at even Gaelic football in the men's game, like, I remember a game between Crossmaglen and Drummond up in Armagh before, and it was Drummond were going to be suspended if they didn't field. So I remember a pile of committee members went onto the field. They were wearing their jeans. They threw on a top, and the game essentially officially went ahead. I think Crossmaglen scored and then did a training session at the bottom of the pitch or something like that. These, like, people are often wearing, in the men's game as well, the shorts are different. People are wearing leggings, some people are wearing tracksuit bottoms, socks are different. It's not part of the official uniform, but it's not something that we really investigate. I mean, football boots are supposed to be at a certain standard as well. They're not checked. They're not always, unless the referee completely notices it. But there's certain things, like, say, the gum shield, that the ref will keep an eye out for. Some referees will, others won't. I don't know why this Skort thing has really been subject to such scrutiny. Like, it seems strange, something that we could just sort of let slide by.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the thing as well. Like, it's okay. Like, remember Trevor Giles got fined for wearing the so there is protocol around dress. But it's because of the nature of this, and because it's in a female sport as well, and because one of the reasons that this has been hung on to is this kind of outdated notion of femininity, that skirts or skirts, whatever, represent kind of something that, like, a female version of men wearing shorts in ethnic. All of those things are so outdated now. So, like, we all know this is going one way anyway. Yeah. Like, you can minimise the scandal. Like, this is why you have an executive. This is why you have people in positions of authority, so they can make these kind of decisions and go out on a limb. And, like, this will all be done and dusted next Thursday, hopefully. The thing will be voted through and we'll all have forgotten about it in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, there's reputational damage to the Camogie Association itself. Not to the sport, but to the association itself, because they've handled this in a very poor way.
Well, I'd love to know the timeline at which the playing population decided this was crazy, because here is a video from 2013, the audio of it, and it was just a season launch, and there's any number of players there. The second voice talking about femininity is Anna Geary, who people obviously will know. So this is 12 years ago, and it's like a quickfire thing of different issues, and one of the issues is Skorts. And bearing in mind that 2013 is not 1913, the responses are pretty interesting. It's unanimous. Have a listen.
Skorts or shorts?
Skorts.
Skorts, I think, to maintain the femininity in the game.
Skorts. They look more girly.
Skorts or shorts?
Skorts.
2013.
Yeah.
It was. Now look, that's a small sample size of 4 players, but so it's somewhere in the last decade they've decided no. So the problem, I suppose, is when this vote happened at Congress last year, that the players weren't heard, and so now they've said, well, enough is enough. But isn't it interesting? 12 years ago, that was the feeling, and how quickly it's just flicked on a dime, and executive slow on the uptake.
Yeah, and it's probably like a societal thing as much as it is a camogie thing,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because, like, it's one thing. Like, I understand it's one thing if players were proposing wearing a Chiquita banana costume like they were running in a marathon, but when it's such a small thing and you're making such a big deal about it, it becomes very sort of symbolic and weighty.
Yes.
And yeah, it's just a bad look. And like the whole thing of playing under protest this weekend and calling off the Munster final last weekend, that's poor management. Like I know Munster Council or the Camogie Association probably felt that by calling off, that they'd no choice but to call off the Munster final last weekend, because logistically you would have had people showing up, paying into a game that wasn't going to go ahead if they went through with their stance. But I mean, that's not really the right decision to make. There was a better way of making a decision there, and if you have to draw those lines,
it's crazy. There was a simple, as Kelly said, suspend the rule until you fix it. There was just there had to be just get old Donald Trump an executive order this thing and just say, listen, until our Congress on the 22nd, shorts, go for it.
And if it doesn't go through in Congress next week, well, then you have a very serious problem.
Well, that's, I sincerely hope next Friday we're not dealing with the aftermath of the biggest protest, two fingers vote from a certain generation to the players, or like it's going to be a long summer. Then we have a real problem. So we'll see. Curious for your thoughts on this, fella. So that's kind of the news. It's not super kind of busy. McFadden Ferry, Donegal. We talked about it with Pat Spillane and Philly McMahon on Monday. This was after the Donegal Armagh match where McFadden Ferry made the interesting decision to run over to the Armagh bench from about 10 metres away and celebrate in front of them. And one Armagh substitute or part of the backroom team, don't know who he is, ran on through a dig, and then several more followed. So this obviously came up on Monday. Philly McMahon was strong in his opinion on what happened.
Here's where I stand, and this is not holding me tongue here. Like, McFadden Ferry deserves a box for celebrating in front of a bench. Is it wrong then to hit him? Of course it is, but he deserves a box, right?
He certainly wasn't saying, "Why did you hit me?" He understood why.
Right?
Yeah,
you've won. Move in. Go in. Like I don't remember ever celebrating in front of an opposition's face like that. Like, you deserve a box from that.
Pat Spillane was on as well, and I was probably more in his corner. Pat was saying, like, I abhor violence. I think it's endemic in our culture. I've never hit anyone in my life. As an aside, he asked Philly, what does it feel like to hit someone? It's a curious moment.
Genuinely curious.
By the way, what does it feel like?
Why did he think Philly would know?
Because we had asked Philly if he'd punched anyone, and Philly said, oh yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I had to ask Philly that, did you?
It came up anyway. Pat asked him.
Right.
Pat asked him, have you ever hit anyone? What did it feel like? And then I suggested Pat could hit Philly for charity sometime this summer. So that's still on the table. And I thought, geez, Philly, look, people who speak honestly in public, great.
Yeah.
Because I suspect a lot of WhatsApp groups were of the same opinion. But he's not alone. Joe Brawley here on the Great Free State podcast with Dion Fanning gave his take on the situation.
The Donegal lad, he goes in front of the Armagh bench after Donegal have won it, right at the bitter end, and taunts them, and he got what he deserved, really. I mean, he got thumped once, and he said, come on, and unlike Bruce Lee, he wasn't able to finish what he started. He got really what he deserved, the kid. He shouldn't be at it, and I appreciate that, it's beyond the boundaries, like to go knocking the head off him. But I mean, you'd think that if that happened in a big rugby game, that there would be any other outcome than that. I will happily defend the Armagh subs if it ever came to it.
So it's interesting that feeling is out there.
Well, I would say that is a pretty widespread or widely held opinion.
I think it's a majority opinion.
I think it's a majority opinion.
Which is mad.
What I find mad is the moral ambiguity to the whole thing, because, like, Joe Brawley used to blow kisses to the crowd after he scored a goal. If you search online, Philly McMahon, there's any number of images of Philly McMahon goading an opponent during a game. But where the great, like what we're saying here is that when the game is over and you've won, to do that to an opposition's bench or the opposition team, that is beyond the pale. And I kind of get it, but at the same time, when you rationalise it, like I was watching an under-20 hurling game last night on TG Carberton, Dublin, Galway, and in hurling, every time somebody wins a free out, they kind of go the opposition player, and that's like the culture of the thing. And then what we're saying is that once the full-time whistle is blown, it becomes a different thing. It becomes this mortal sin nearly. And like, again, I do get it, but at the same time, if I was using the rational part of my brain, it doesn't make a whole pile of sense.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the fact that the majority of opinion would be in line with Philly, in line with Brawley, I do think it's mad. Like, people saying he deserves it. Like, McFadden Ferry, what he did was unbelievably annoying, right? It's crass.
Unbelievably annoying. Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't want any of my players doing that. I'd say McGuinness is a little bit sickened that he did that, but he didn't deserve a beating. He didn't deserve someone running and throwing a punch at him. Like, I get it. There's some things you could file under the category of that fella could do with a punch in the face. And I've got a filing cabinet of that as well, right? But it doesn't mean that the Armagh subs are the people that have to dish out that justice. Like, it doesn't mean that he deserves to be jumped on, right? Because if you and I were walking down the street and I went, oh, hey, and then you and your buddies jumped on top of me, like, I know whose side the court would actually be on. Like, I'll defer to Brawley there, but like, all I've done is shouted in your face. Like
Yeah.
Brawley said he could defend the Armagh subs. I mean, I would be surprised if he could in that case. And McFadden Ferry, again, like I said, two things are true here. What he did is really annoying, but what he deserved was all of us saying, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's low.
Pariah status.
Yeah, have a bit more class.
I agree with you. And actually, it's funny. There's our interpretations of what happened are vastly different. It's fascinating. Joe Brawley said there that after the first Armagh player came on and threw a left-handed punch in his face, he said that he thought McFadden Ferry said, "Come on, give me more." Whereas I've watched it several times, McFadden Ferry backs away and almost puts up his hands as if to say, "Whoa, I'm not armed." Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So he wasn't saying, "Give me more." He was saying, "Whoa."
Yeah.
And then at least 3, if not 4 others from the Armagh bench were racing beyond the first punch thrower and piled in on him. Look, I'm with you. I'm with Pat Spillane. Like, look, geez, I play sport all my life. I'm sure I'm no angel, and I'm a terrible loser. Like, what McFadden Ferry did would have just driven me demented. But I'm with Spillane. I've never closed my fist and punched someone in the face. And that whole thing, like the way we talk about it, he deserved a box. Like what I think, to be fair, what Philly and Joe are getting at there is less. It's like a slap. It's like because throwing a punch, as we know, can have a devastating effect on somebody. It can kill people. Now it can depend on how you fall, and I suspect on a grass pitch you're unlikely to fall on a hard surface and crack your head open. But you can get a punch the wrong time, wrong place, and it can just have devastating effects. So I think if you put that to Philly or Joe, they both sort of, it's a weird casual relationship we have with violence. It's like, Joe says it's beyond the boundaries, of course, but I defend them. And Philly said, like, it's wrong, but he deserved a box. I don't know, the more I think about it over the last 2 days, and it's not a high moral ground thing, it's not a high horse. High horse is a bad horse. But actually, you stop and look at it. Those Armagh players should have the book thrown at them. We just can't have them running on, clenched fists and boxing the head of someone. You just can't. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that the common refrain was, geez, he deserved it though.
Absolutely.
He had it coming. And I know what he did was so annoying.
So annoying.
Yeah,
Brawley said he couldn't finish what he started. He didn't start that. He started going, "Come on!" Like he didn't say, he didn't throw a punch and started.
Yeah, the other point he said was that if that was a rugby match, the same thing would have happened. It wouldn't. That's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah,
that's wrong. In a rugby match, what happens now, and Paul O'Connell had the experience of putting a teammate in hospital, and they almost have realised, the rugby lads, they're that big that they can do serious damage. What the rugby lads do is they grab each other by the collar and they sort of smile at each other. Again, in a very Fadden McFerry annoying way.
Yeah.
Big smiles. But they wouldn't, a rugby bench would not have run on and punched. And I'm not saying rugby's perfect. I'm not like for one sport against another sport. They wouldn't have done that. That is a GAA problem.
Yeah, and you see the conversation that was going on between Aidan Forker and Jim McGuinness, and like Forker was making some point there, and like the only point that he could be making is he deserved a box.
Yeah.
And you can see McGuinness with his hands up going, well, look. But what was mad about what McFadden Ferry did is that, like, of all the values that modern inter-county teams espouse, or like to think that they espouse, the main one is what? Humility. They love being humble. That's the thing that great teams like to say that they have the most, and that's the opposite of it. That's absolutely the opposite of it.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know like what sort of Moughton and Golden and stuff went on during the match, but like, to go back to my earlier point, there is an imaginary sort of line here. When the game is over, you go back to acting like a normal human being again. The kind of rules of war have kind of suddenly ceased.
Yeah, but there is, if we're being honest, there still is also in a GAA thing that, like, throwing a box is sort of okay.
Like, well, obviously we saw Ross McQuillan go to Sean Patton after he scores. He grabs him and he's celebrating in his face, and that happens. And in the game, if Sean Patton reacts to that, we say that's stupid. After the game, what Conor's saying, that's out of order.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we don't know what's going on. We don't know where we all stand on it. But I just think the fact that we're coming in hard here on McFadden Ferry, and what you said, you about the culture of GAA, I do think it is more of a GAA problem. Like, I've thrown one punch in my whole life, and it happened because I had the finger pointed at me to say, by a manager, you're letting him bully you. You're letting him hit you. Because I always looked at that and thought, well, if I react here and I get sent off, I'm stupid. I'm out of the game. But then the GAA thing, it's not specific to this manager. It's you're letting that happen. And exactly what Brawley and stuff are sort of getting at there as well. Like, there's a different type of moral code in the GAA.
Yeah, there's a culture of it. That's what, like, he deserves a box is a cultural phrase.
Yes, it is,
you know what I mean? Like, nobody deserves a box. You know what I mean?
And as soon as Philly said he deserves a box, he also said, I know that's wrong, but it's like it's that deep-rooted under my skin GA thing. But do you remember, and I mentioned it on Monday, we were talking, Conor, Ronan was here, like culture shifts are possible and more quickly than you would think, because I was stunned in the dying minutes where McGrain was adjudged to have touched the ball on the ground at on the halfway line, and I didn't think he had. And yet, instead of protesting as he would be entitled to do, I think, and as he would have done last year, he couldn't give the ball back quickly enough to the Donegal player, and he ran back into position, and it was done. And I thought, I remember being stunned by it, because it was such a 50-50 decision, if anything 40-60 in his favour. And it was so crucial. I thought he is within his rights to go apoplectic here, and he didn't. And I thought that is the most remarkable, like in terms of speed, culture shift that you've seen in a sport. So why would that not apply to something more serious, like punching somebody in the face?
Because if you're going to cost your team, you're going to be coached. That's what it all comes down to, collective behaviour.
Okay, yeah.
So you have far few punches being thrown in Gaelic football matches now than you used to. Why? Because players are responsible for their own behaviour, and they know it won't be tolerated by referees within the confines of the game. Generally speaking, these sort of things, and they don't really happen that often, you do tend to find a slew of, when the club season gets going again and people have their camera phones out, but generally they tend to be sort of like away from the match or after the match with these sort of things. And like I'm don't want to be guilty of trying to skip over them or make them sound like they're sort of some sort of lesser kind of offence because they happen in the general confines or extended confines of a GAA match. But that's what you're talking about, cultural shift. Players I don't think will risk letting their team down or getting sent off during a game, whereas after the game it's almost like those rules are kind of...
Well, they're not going to penalise you. You can't go back and say it's a free in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
it's a terrible look. Just like
it's grim.
Like
it's grim.
It's a bad look.
And like I know, Joe saying I'll defend them. So your defence is, but like what your man did was really annoying. But like that happens in life. You have to control your impulses.
Yeah,
we all do.
And there is an element for Armagh again, like we say, McFadden very annoying, but you have to take your medicine. You've lost the match. You have to suck it up.
Yeah. So it's like natural justice.
The only one I can remember. Do you remember a few years ago when after Waterford beat Wexford, and was it Wexford or Clare, when Davy was over and John Milan ran across the pitch and then celebrated at Davy's feet like he literally laid down in front of him at the time. And I remember thinking that was extraordinarily provocative now, but that was obviously very sort of personal in that situation.
Yeah, but look, it's a curious thing because and I'd be guilty of it too, like there's hypocrisy everywhere. Like if we were doing a live kind of roadshow vibe with some GAA lads of yesteryear and the crowd were there. Some of the best stories. Some of the best stories would be around violence. Or on off the ball for years, we had Dahi Regan, at the start of the All-Ireland final, and I went for him and I opened him.
Yeah.
So there's hypocrisy on my part. Or like I said literally the other week that like I don't want the international rules back unless there's fights again. We played out with it.
Yeah.
So I'm as kind of immersed in that, and it's in my soul as well. The bloodthirst is there. So like it's a very confused point I'm making. Like I'm completely hypocritical. I couldn't state that loudly enough.
Yeah, and Brawley's almost like a poster boy for that, because say the work that Brawley does in his spare time, in his professional life, even in the GAA, like he's such a kind spirit.
Yeah.
Right? And then his writing about MMA is like so forthright. He will go for MMA and talk about how just it's out of order. It shouldn't be
Blood
happening.
sport, yeah.
But when it comes to GAA, Brawley loves recalling those stories. There was an ambulance at the corner and they were just throwing them in off the pitch straight into the ambulance.
And I think, to be fair to the two guys, the terminology they use, like deserved a slap, deserved a box, there is a degree there. Like if McFadden Ferry had emerged from the bodies bloodied, I think everybody would have said, whoa, that's too much. I think there's a degree of, look, he got an L slap. He
won't do it again.
He won't do it again, but it didn't hurt him. So it's the perfect balance, like your mum with the wooden spoon. She can't follow through. It's just enough. Sorry, that's my therapist.
This is childhood trauma.
Let's move on. I'm fascinated for thoughts on that, by the way, because it's one of those interesting topics that we all have a kind of it's a feel thing as opposed to rationality. Pretty much at a time. Like this weekend, the football round robin gets underway. Galway Dublin's interesting on Saturday. Mayo, Cavan, Clare Down, yeah. Kerry Roscommon, yeah. And then the hurling, in particular Limerick Cork, where Clare are hoping for a favour. Tipperary play Waterford. So the hurling's centre stage on the Sunday. It's a double header. So that's all kicking off. And then Sunday, the hurling, Limerick Cork, Clare kind of hoping for a favour there in that game. Tipperary Waterford. So it's a double header on the Sunday in the hurling. So it's all kind of getting underway. This is peak season, Conor. What are you going to?
I'm going to Mayo Cavan.
Mayo Cavan.
Yeah.
Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
I missed
Park.
the editorial meeting on Tuesday because it was off. So
Oh, is he like, who wants to go to what? And then Conor's not here.
What was left?
He really wanted to go and see Cavan away to Mayo.
What was left in the celebrations, Tim?
Yeah, exactly.
Hugh Gavin.
Conor has made, he's about to try and do it again, right? And I'm not buying what he's selling. Conor's giving it the old, no, look, listen, these group stages now, you want to, finishing three is no good to you because, well, you know, if you have an extra game and it's away and there's, 3 weeks in the row, it's very, and I'm like snoring in the corner. I just can't.
Well, see, the thing about the group stages is, and remember, this is the last year of this.
Yeah.
It's that they're not a thing until they become one, and then they do very much become one because we don't know exactly.
I don't know what that means.
Well,
It's what it is.
We don't know what the big ramifications will be from this weekend's results until they happen, and then all of a sudden it's week 2, and the team you didn't expect to be under pressure are under pressure, and that puts them with a higher level of motivation for the game that they're going into that you thought they might ease up at that stage, and then all of a sudden a big team is in danger of finishing third and having to play an away preliminary quarter-final. So if everyone hasn't fallen asleep on that,
I know. Jeez. If only you'd said that at Congress, they would have kept this structure. It sounds fascinating.
Well, all we know is that only the winners of a group wins the All Ireland. We only have 2 years of a sample size.
Pretty small.
Dublin and Armagh
won
their group and they won the All Ireland.
Galway finished, was it second? And
Second.
got to the final.
Yeah.
Does anyone think that finishing second is what cost Galway
They were in
the
a group
All-Ireland
of Armagh
final?
though.
But do we think if they'd finished top of that group, they'd won the All-Ireland final? No. It's not that.
No, but they might have been.
Terrible
They might have been a bit fresher by the
think?
time they got to.
They wouldn't have had to play Dublin. They would have played Roscommon in the quarter-final instead.
Yeah, and they mightn't have had their starting full forward line as injured as they were going into
They
the
were
All-Ireland
crocked
final.
anyway. They're crocked all year.
Well, there'll be 1 week less crocked.
Well, look,
I think I've proved my point, Joe, and I don't think we need to debate this any further.
I look forward to Conor in the paper this week is writing the piece on why the current structure is perfection.
Why Mayo Cavan is the game of the weekend?
Well, we won't know until we know what we know.
Yeah, and
More jeopardy and more interesting than you think, says McKeown.
yeah, well, yeah, and the hurling games this weekend as well. That's like this is the perfect setup weekend. Like
There's too much here, but-
next weekend is going to be sensational in hurling because there will be. Like everything would be on the line in both provinces.
A lot of games, though, isn't it? Like you look at that schedule. How many can you realistically watch? And it doesn't help. The USPGA is on. There's nothing. The Premier League's no good. Sorry, what's?
Excuse me.
Okay,
Friday night.
Yeah. But Friday. This doesn't clash with Friday.
Yeah.
Like 5. You've a lot of stuff on.
Spurs Villa.
Yeah, but it starts to thin out. Then we're at the end of the like we're going into provincial hurling finals. Then all of a sudden we start to give out that there's not enough matches.
Oh, I know. Sorry, it's like it's all or nothing. It's feast or famine, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the problem.
And the difference is we're going in now, having had the most successful provincial football championships in donkeys years.
It's so good.
I mean, if the GAA weren't inclined to get rid of them when they were ailing and of no interest to anybody, they are like it's the exact opposite.
you know
They'll be there for another 100 years.
I was totally bought into them this year. Like the Ulster and the Leinster, like winning that was a thing in and of itself. I was like, why does this feel so relevant again? It's unbelievable.
And even Munster, where you had a very one-sided final, you had a cracker in the semi-final.
Yeah, it was great.
Kerry and Cork,
So
which we haven't had for a couple of years as well.
If they all go at it like that and the games themselves are entertaining, then I am kind of, that local rivalry adds a certain flavour to our summer,
See, that's the thing. And people say, well, okay, Meath and Louth, they'd never have made it past the semi-final in Ulster. But that's not the point. The point is that they're supposed to be competitions in their own. Yeah. And if they work as competitions in their own right, that's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Much like our verdict on the violence in the GAA, the provincial. It's irrational, it's like gut, it's all that kind of stuff.
No, Gaelic football is so hot right now.
So hot right now, it's unbelievable. I'm actually so sick. It's over in July. Anyway, that's a
season competition.
That's a downbeat finish. God, I can't get over how good my voice sounds. Just listening to it here, incredible. Some people are going to listen to this podcast twice just to get more. Conan, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sexy Joe.
Sexy Joe. And Conor McKeown, you can report back next week from McHale Park and more besides. And we'll see how the USPGA goes. Who are you tipping, by the way? Just give me a name.
Oh, a little guy called Rory McIlroy.
Are you actually?
Well, it's just one of those. I think if he did, like, had he butchered the back nine at the Masters and come off the worst loss of all time, I'd still have given him a shout going into this one because he's so good in this place.
Yeah.
Justin Thomas obviously is tracking nicely and has good. Like, the obvious ones are the obvious ones for a reason, aren't they?
But especially around this course.
Yeah.
Like, Rory wins at this place because this is lots of trees and lots of dog legs. And instead of like playing the course as we would, which is following the fairway, he completely cuts the corner over the trees.
Yeah, he sticks it over the OB and drives.
There'll be lots this week. You'll be watching this week if you are. And when Rory hits a shot, there'll be lots of, oh my God, he's carried it. He's way up there. Yeah, Nick Fallow has been watching him do it for 10 years. Is still shocked.
If his driving doesn't suddenly just go haywire, it's very hard to, like, he will have it, like, it's statistically inevitable that he will have a lot of birdie chances.
As will Bryson.
There'll
be lots of, oh my God, he's cut the corner. So Bryson, Rory, Bryson has sort of his irons from the Masters, but like he's had plenty of time to do that. So they feel very likely. Scotty's sharp again. It really does feel like we're in for a bumper leaderboard.
Yeah, I would find it hard to fathom an outcome where you're looking at it's Russell Henley going up against. You know what I mean? I find it hard to see at least two of the
biggies,
four that we've made not being in contention by Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you. So here's hoping. Alrighty, God, it feels like a Friday doing all that. David Gillick is in tomorrow. That was Bits and Bobs. We might do a mailbag edition at some stage next week, so get your emails in. Thanks again to the lads, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.